Now, the big thing everybody always wants to know about is what can I protect if I file bankruptcy? And this is called your exemptions. And exemptions are a certain dollar amount of certain kinds of things that no one can take from you. And they are determined by your state law. Every state has an exemption statute as far as I know. And then the Bankruptcy Code has its own exemption statute, Section 522. And most states, I don't know the statistics, but most states have opted out of the federal exemptions and say that you can't use the federal exemptions in there if you file bankruptcy in that state. That's the way South Carolina has always been. But then Congress, in all its wisdom, when it changed the law 5-6 years ago, it totally screwed up exemptions. We're used to it now, and we know how to deal with it. But what it said is that you can't, when you file bankruptcy in a state, the law has always been if you filed bankruptcy in South Carolina, you use the South Carolina exemptions. That makes perfect sense. But what was happening is like Florida had unlimited exemptions. I'm not a sports fan, but y'all may have all heard of Bowie Kuhn, baseball commissioner years ago. Well, his case got a lot of publicity because he filed he sold everything he had and moved to Florida, which has an unlimited homestead exemption, and he bought like a $40 million house and then filed bankruptcy and protected his entire house with the homestead exemption. And people have been doing that for, decades, probably longer, and it's just what you do if you're trying to protect your assets. You go to the place with the best exemptions and file bankruptcy there. Well, to stop that, or at least slow it down, they created a rule that said if you file bankruptcy in a state, you can't use that state's exemptions unless you've lived there for 2 years. All right? Which, I can deal with that, but you had to be very specific, very careful at knowing when your client has moved to a state and count the days, because one day matters. But then it says if you haven't lived there for 2 years, you use the exemptions of the state that you lived in for 2 years prior to that. Well, that makes perfect sense. But the problem is most state exemptions, like South Carolina and I'm pretty sure North Carolina, say that you can't use their exemptions unless you live within their borders at the time you're claiming them. So then the Bankruptcy Code says if you can't use if there are no state exemptions for you to use, then you use the federal exemptions. So you have to really know you have to be careful when you're picking your exemptions. But on my website, I've got a table that says basically what items and the dollar amounts of each of those items that you can protect as your exemptions. It's just the two examples that apply to most, or three examples that apply to most people. You can protect up to $53,350 worth of equity in your house per owner that's in bankruptcy. You can protect, well, bankruptcy doesn't have anything to do with the exemptions. You get your exemptions whether you live, if you're not in bankruptcy, the exemptions in South Carolina, they're still yours. I mean, just you sitting here having creditors come after you, the exemptions are yours, that you have them as a matter of, as a citizen of South Carolina. So if your creditors are all harassing, I frequently tell people, you don't own anything that's not exempt, but you are filing bankruptcy to start cleaning your credit up now instead of letting it languish for 9 more years, or to, just get rid of the harassment or some combination of the two. And that's because the exemptions aren't too bad here. They used to be lousy, but about, a group of us lobbied pretty hard for about 6 or 8 months, and we got the exemptions changed probably been 3 or 4 years ago. But we went from $5,000 per person on your house to $53,350. And your car went from $1,200 to now it's $5,350. Your household goods went from gosh, I don't even remember. They were so low, $1,200 to $5,350 a person. And most people who need to file bankruptcy, they've liquidated everything, borrowed against everything. They don't have more than $12,000 garage sale value of furniture in their house. It just doesn't happen that way. And they don't have more than $108,000 worth of equity in their house. So their stuff is usually safe.